Hello and welcome, it is I, MrSnake. You as always are amazing. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different, a little bit of snap training, where I make you more obedient, linking it to the sound of my finger snaps. Where each time I snap my fingers, you become more obedient for me. So it triggers you to go into a wonderfully submissive mode. A wonderfully submissive way of thinking each time I snap my fingers. So I want you to get yourself into a really nice, comfortable position, a position that will really lend itself to going deep, a position that will lend itself to becoming more compliant and more obedient. And for the purpose of this file, every time I snap my fingers, I want you to say out loud or think inside of your mind, I obey. So that each time I snap my fingers, you automatically and instantly think, I obey. And this trigger will be limited just to this file, so that when I and I alone snap my fingers, you think or say, I obey. And we're going to do a few little practice runs first, just to get you in the right frame of mind. Let your body settle down into the most comfortable position possible. Become aware of your breathing. And on your next breathe out, you obey. Becoming more submissive and more obedient. Every single time I and I alone snap my fingers. I want you to feel your mind and your body relax. And of course you will. Because each time I and I alone during the session snap my fingers, you obey. So I want you to think of a time when you felt incredibly submissive. I want you to think of a time when you felt completely controlled, and where you would always obey the dominant's voice. And link it now to the sound of this snap, so that each and every time I snap my fingers, your mind instantly and automatically thinks, I obey. And this trigger will only work whenever I snap my fingers. You'll be freed of this suggestion from anyone else. But when I snap my fingers, you obey. Becoming more compliant, becoming more amenable to my suggestions, you obey. So whether you say it out loud, or whether you think it in your mind, each time I and I alone snap my fingers, you obey. And as we've already established, obedience is pleasure. Pleasure is obedience. Drop deeper for me now. That's right. I want you to sink as deep as you possibly can for me right now. And each time I snap my fingers during this session, the words, I obey, spring instantly to your mind. There you go. Each time I and I alone snap my fingers, you think or say, I obey. And doesn't that feel good? Doesn't it feel good to obey? It really does. And it's almost like your mind is processing every single time you've been amazingly submissive. And almost like all of those moments of submission are just waiting for this sound. Submission and pleasure and feeling of well-being comes to you each and every time I snap my fingers and you say, I obey. Which means that because obedience is pleasure and pleasure is obedience, each time I snap my fingers, there may be a little twinge of pleasure that comes with being obedient, that comes with obeying, becoming more submissive each time I and I alone snap my fingers and you obey, training you, knowing that you're enjoying this process of obedience each time I snap my fingers, become more compliant, more amenable, more submissive, more subservient. Each snap of my fingers makes you more and more aware of the unconscious fact that you're loving, becoming more and more submissive. Because you love to obey. Obedience is pleasure. Pleasure is obedience. And you know your role. Your role is to obey. There you go. And you know it's natural that you love to obey, and it's natural that you enjoy pleasure. Those are amazing things that everyone like you should enjoy. I want you to drop even deeper for me. And doesn't it almost seem like each time I ask you to do something and snap my fingers, you just instantly follow my suggestion? And you're enjoying this experience because and this trance is a wonderfully safe place for you to enjoy this submission, so that you can feel free to be your most submissive self. Because you obey. You can't resist the wonderful allure of being snapped into submission, into pleasure, into obedience. You just automatically agree and follow along with my suggestions and my words. Just like that. Which means that the suggestions I make you will follow instantly, effortlessly, without thought, question, or hesitation, because you obey. And it feels so good to obey, to let go. You obey. To have me make the decisions for you. You obey. It feels good to just know that you're under control and I'm in charge because you obey. I want you to drop even deeper. There you go. You're doing so well. And you're doing so well because you obey. And you're enjoying this so very much. So much that each time I and I alone snap my fingers, you automatically obey the suggestion. Becoming more trained. Becoming more conditioned. Because you obey. And doesn't surrender and complete subservience feel wonderful? You obey. There's a delicious, comforting reassurance in submission to the sound of my voice and the sound it makes when I snap my fingers like this. You obey. It just feels so natural and so right for you to obey. It's where you should be and it's what you should do. And you are. You obey. And in this delightful place in your unconscious mind, you know that you need to obey. Obeying my voice, following this training comes so naturally and so easy to you, almost like it's second nature, because it is. You obey, automatically following my suggestions because you obey. In this trance and in this training, you can feel free to just be your most submissive self. You obey. In this file, during this session, becoming completely submissive. You obey. For me, was just a snap of my fingers. And it might well be that your unconscious mind is just yearning and has been craving for this for a long time. Craving the snap and that sensation of submission that washes over your mind and body, just like this. You obey. You obey. It feels so good to let go. It feels so good to be the perfect submissive right now because you obey and you are. You really are. You obey. This file is where you allow yourself to be your most submissive self. And you're enjoying this because you obey and feel pleasure. And you feel pleasure when you obey because obedience is pleasure. And pleasure is obedience. Looking forward to and welcoming each snap. And maybe you've noticed already that each time I snap my fingers, it seems like tension or stress just instantly fade away from your body. Just like that. So that the submission feels even more powerful, even more alluring and appealing. And let's just test that. I'm going to snap my fingers, you're going to say, I obey. And you're going to feel so amazingly good. Doesn't that feel good? And the reason it feels good is because you obey. You obey. When I snap my fingers and when you say, I obey, you don't have to think, say, or do anything other than just say, I obey and accept your obedience. When I snap my fingers, you just let go of any cares or worries. You sink and drop into a deeper state of submission as part of your training because you obey. Any thoughts, cares, or concerns vanish and dissipate as the surrender comes upon you each time I snap my fingers. You obey. And you can take great pride in being such a good subject and being such a good submissive, knowing that each time I snap my fingers, you obey. Knowing that each time I snap my fingers, You obey. That obedience is instant, without thought, question, or hesitation. You obey. Training your mind to automatically accept the fact that, yes, you obey. When you're being this submissive, and when you're obeying so well, you don't have to think. You don't have to deal with any anxieties, worries, or stresses. Doesn't that feel better when you obey? It does. It really does. Becoming more conditioned with each snap. Becoming better trained with each snap. Following along to my suggestions. Taking on board the words I say. And it doesn't even matter if your conscious mind isn't paying attention, because your unconscious mind is always paying attention to the words I say and the suggestions I make, because you obey. Because you obey. When I snap my fingers, you obey. When I snap my fingers, you become carefree and unburdened, submissive and compliant, obedient. Because you obey. Each snap might have a little tingle of pleasure. And that's good, because I want to reward you for good behavior. I want to reward you for being such a good subject and such a good submissive. And you know, as well as the pleasure, it might even be that you feel almost like a little wave of submissive energy just wash through and suffuse into every pore and fiber of your being, each and every time I and I alone snap my fingers and you obey. I snap my fingers and you obey. I snap my fingers and you obey. So whether you say it out loud or whether you think it inside your mind, each time I and I alone snap my fingers, you obey. Each snap of my fingers provides you with immense comfort, feeling valued and cared for. Just like that. Each time I and I alone snap my fingers, you become instantly submissive, amenable, biddable, and submissive to the sound of my voice, following my suggestions instantaneously. And doesn't that feel good? It really does. It feels good because you're obeying instantly. And you might find that each snap of my fingers might be at the end of a statement or a question, which means you automatically follow it because you obey. I snap my fingers and you obey. I snap my fingers and you obey. I snap my fingers and you obey. In a few moments, I'm going to count from 1 up to 5. And when I reach 5, you come out of trance freed of any suggestions that aren't right, safe, or appropriate for you. 1, beginning to come up out of trance. 2, feeling amazingly calm and relaxed. 3, a feeling of well-being washes over you. 4, you may want to wiggle your fingers and toes, freed of all suggestions that aren't right, safe, or appropriate. And 5, opening your eyes, coming up out of trance, feeling amazingly good about the session you just had with me. Now, as always, I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd like to thank you for your continued support, and I look forward to trancing you again very, very soon. Have an amazing rest of your week.